Researchers studying a group of capuchin monkeys noticed one individual kept doing something odd. She'd sneak up behind another monkey, make a soft alarm sound just loud enough for one target to hear, then watch as that monkey bolted in fear. No predator, no real threat, just her watching every single time. Eventually, the researchers realized something. She was only doing this to monkeys who had recently taken food from her. That's not an accident, that's a strategy, and it's not the only one like it. We've been taught for years that every single thing an animal does traces back to pure survival. Eat, sleep, reproduce, avoid being eaten, no room for waste, no room for mischief. But the more researchers actually watch these animals up close, the more that tidy explanation falls apart. Nature isn't just a battlefield. In certain corners of it, nature is also a playground for some genuinely unapologetic jerks. Let's start in the sky, because the undisputed heavyweight champions of animal pranking are corvids, crows, ravens, magpies. These birds have a brain-to-body mass ratio that rivals chimpanzees, and they have apparently decided to spend some of that brain power on being menaces. Ravens have a documented behavior researchers call tail pulling. Picture a bald eagle or a wolf resting on the ground, minding its own business. A raven lands quietly behind it. It creeps forward, slow and deliberate, grabs a beak full of tail feathers, and yanks. The eagle whips around, furious. The raven simply hops back, flies just out of reach, and lets out a series of harsh caws that sound unmistakably like laughing. For a long time, biologists assumed this was a hunting strategy, a way to distract a predator away from a carcass. Then field studies found something stranger. Ravens do this with no food anywhere nearby. They target sleeping dogs, resting hawks, even each other. There's no resource at stake. It looks for all the world like a high-stakes game of ding-dong ditch, where the only prize is watching something much bigger lose its mind with frustration. Crows take it even further, into something closer to psychological warfare. Crows can mimic sounds with remarkable precision, including the alarm calls of completely different bird species. A crow will perch above a flock of feeding pigeons, then perfectly mimic the shriek of a hunting hawk. The entire flock scatters in panic, food abandoned. The crow flies down unbothered, eats everything left behind, and does it again an hour later. That's not instinct reacting to danger. That's a bird running a con. If birds are the subtle operators, primates are the loud, physical comedians. And in chimpanzee and baboon communities, the pranks double as a way to push against authority without paying the full price for open rebellion. Every chimp troop has an alpha male who rules through intimidation, chest puffing, and the threat of violence. And every troop also has adolescent males who are, evolutionarily speaking, basically teenagers, bored, restless, drawn to anything with a thrill attached. Researchers have repeatedly documented young chimps climbing directly above a sleeping alpha, gathering hard fruit or small stones and dropping them with deliberate aim onto his head. When the alpha wakes up screaming and looking for someone to blame, the young chimp is already grooming itself a few branches up, the picture of innocence. Get caught, and the consequences are serious. They do it anyway. Baboons aim their chaos at other species entirely. In regions where baboon and goat territory overlap, researchers have filmed baboons waiting for a young goat to wander from its mother, then sprinting in, snatching it and carrying it straight up into a tree. You'd assume what comes next is predation. It isn't. The baboon sits down, settles the kid goat in its lap, and starts grooming it, combing its fur, patting its head, treating it like a toy it's decided to keep. The mother goat screams from the ground for the better part of an hour while the baboon calmly continues its grooming session entirely unbothered. Eventually, it sets the unharmed kid down in a bush and walks off, apparently satisfied. The trend doesn't stop at the waterline either. Bottlenose dolphins, widely considered the ocean's most cognitively complex mammal, bring the same energy underwater, and their version of play has a noticeably darker edge once boredom sets in. Pufferfish carry a neurotoxin that's lethal in large doses, but produces something closer to a narcotic high in tiny amounts. Dolphins have figured this out. A group will find a pufferfish, nudge it, bite it gently, and pass it back and forth like a toy. The terrified fish inflates and releases its toxin defensively. The dolphins, completely undeterred, keep at it until they're visibly drifting in a loose, trance-like state near the surface. Then they let the fish go. Seabirds get a different treatment. A dolphin will glide silently underneath a gull resting on the surface, then fire a blast of water out of its blowhole, launching the bird several feet into the air. Sometimes the move is gentler and stranger. The dolphin grabs the bird's feet, pulls it briefly underwater, then releases it, watching it flail and scramble back into the air, soaked and disoriented. There's no food reward here. Dolphins don't eat seagulls. The only thing being harvested is the spectacle. So why would evolution allow for any of this? Why would animals burn calories and risk injury just to mess with a neighbor? It comes down to brain power and free time. For sufficiently intelligent, socially complex animals, dolphins, corvids, primates, basic survival stopped being the full-time job it used to be. They're efficient, they're well-fed, they have downtime, and a highly developed brain that gets bored is, evolutionarily speaking, a bit of a liability if it isn't kept occupied. Pranking behavior functions as something close to a mental workout. It sharpens problem-solving, it tests social boundaries, it keeps the machinery running. But there's something underneath that's harder to wave away. To pull off a real prank, you can't just act. You have to model what another mind is thinking, predict how it will react, and deliberately produce a false impression to manipulate that reaction. That's not simple instinct, that's theory of mind, the exact cognitive skill we spent decades assuming belonged to humans alone. Which loops us back to the capuchin from the start. She wasn't issuing random alarm calls into the void. She was targeting specific individuals, the ones who'd taken food from her before, and getting away with retaliation that direct confrontation would have made far too costly. The raven yanking a wolf's tail for no food-related reason. The crow running the same hawk call con on repeat. The young chimp timing a rock drop to a sleeping alpha, the baboon babysitting a stolen goat kid for an hour of pure theater, the dolphin blasting a gull off the surface of the water for what looks, from every angle, like the fun of it. None of these animals are doing this because they have to. They're doing it because, apparently, intelligence left with nothing urgent to solve will eventually go looking for something to mess with. We like to imagine that this kind of behavior, deliberate, mocking, aimed specifically at making someone else look foolish, sits on our side of some clean line between humans and everything else. The evidence keeps suggesting otherwise. The line was never as solid as we wanted it to be, so the next time you see footage of a seagull getting blasted out of the water or a dog waking up with its tail yanked by a crow, you don't need to go searching for some deeper survival explanation. Sometimes the most accurate explanation really is the simplest one. Nature has a sense of humor, and it usually comes at someone else's expense.